Today, I'd like to demonstrate ExtraHop's decryption capabilities and offer some explanations and thoughts around why that's important and talk about the alternatives you have in the space. So let's dig right in. First, why do we care about decrypting our own enterprise network traffic? Well, I'll give you a few reasons. First, in recent times, out of the top 30 most exploited network vulnerabilities, around 60% of those involve the use of protocols that are encrypted using the enterprise's own cryptography. Out of the top 11 most exploited vulnerabilities in general, four involve Microsoft protocols specifically. All of those protocols are encrypted by default, so things like SMB, Kerberos, etc. So that lets us know that it's important for us to consider the flows within our networks that are encrypted as being a possible vector that a bad actor could use to take advantage of, move laterally, or exfiltrate data. So, one more interesting tidbit that I looked into a bit was I was trying to get some numbers on what the state of encryption looks like today. And I found a report from Statista Research from 2021 that talks a bit about how around 60% of their respondents in 21 were broadly using encryption within their own enterprise networks. I would imagine that number has grown considerably in the last couple of years. Additionally, those same respondents noted that only about 34% of them felt like they were adequately gaining visibility into those flows, so that they had a good knowledge or a good way of inspecting that traffic that was encrypted internally. I would venture that many of those 34% are inspecting that traffic using a break and inspect method. And I would also venture that many of them consider adequate visibility to be, at the most, traffic passing between zones or VLANs, so major routed traffic within their network, and that they are not considering it to be critical that they monitor local network traffic between servers inside of their own data center that are not crossing major zones like production to DMZ, etc. So my thoughts around the adequacy of that 34% are that it's probably much lower, in fact. And I believe that it's a very, very small number of enterprises today that have really sound visibility into all of their encrypted flows internally. So, break and inspect versus out of band is one thing I want to talk about just briefly before we dig in today. So, a break and inspect method would be where you place a device in line of an encrypted flow and force both endpoints to negotiate their TLS sessions with this device in the middle. The device in the middle then inspects the traffic and re encrypts it as it sends it along its way, acting as a middleman. Now, in theory, this works great. It gives you a point of control, access to the contents of the traffic, and once implemented well, it can work fine. But there's some problems here. One, you are breaking the end-to-end encryption between those devices, which inherently weakens the encryption. You're introducing a failure point for enterprise applications, which could impact the business. Anybody who's broadly implemented a break and inspect strategy in their own enterprise has certainly encountered challenges with that implementation that most likely led to at least minor interruptions in those business applications, but in many cases, big disruptions and big challenges came along with that break and inspect method, just strictly from an IT and business application standpoint, whenever you introduce this failure point and have to work through getting these devices to all work well through this man in the middle. Now, going beyond break and inspect, we have the option potentially to do out of band. Now, out of band, though, introduces a lot of challenges, and most products out there today, at the very most, that can even consider doing an out of band inspection, can only handle conventional RSA style public private key cryptography. This is where you have something like a PEM file where you have a public and private key, and all of the sessions are encrypted using this private key. And there's no level of perfect forward secrecy. There's no Diffie-Hellman parameters in play. Old school encryption. This is not used very broadly in the modern enterprise. In fact, I've seen this go from being reasonably common still around 2019 to being almost unheard of today. So the rate at which enterprises have gotten rid of this has rendered it as a feature broadly useless, especially whenever it comes to the critical apps. So that leaves us needing to come up with a solution for inspecting perfect forward secrecy, Diffie-Hellman parameter style, TLS 1.3 modern cryptography so we can see what's happening at layer 7, but doing it in a way without interrupting the business or breaking enterprise applications. This is a challenge, and this is one that ExtraHop is well suited to help you conquer. So I want to talk about two ways that ExtraHop can tackle this. So first, think about conventional applications probably using HTTP at layer 7 to pass data between the end user and the web server tier, or the web server and the application tier, all of that middle and front end where that's a major component of most of the modern applications in the business today. Most all of this is being encrypted or moving to be encrypted with a TLS 1.3 or similar style TLS negotiation that involves session keys so that it can have a level of perfect forward secrecy, be what you might consider to be quantum ready. Now, we also have the entire gamut of Microsoft protocols. So this is going to be Kerberos, SMBv3, MSRPC, NTLM, WinRM, various databases, all of the traffic that is part of the overall Microsoft ecosystem, for the most part nowadays, is encrypted using the Active Directory domain, and access is granted through Kerberos tickets. This is another massive swath of data, and arguably, I would say many enterprises would consider that to be the most important swath of data whenever it comes to gaining visibility and understanding what's going on, because this is going to be the corporate file shares, the SQL servers, the remote procedure calls, a significant amount of critical information. ExtraHop has an answer for both of these, and I want to demonstrate what some of that looks like in the product today. So here we're going to pivot into ExtraHop, and I want to show you a few things that are of interest along those lines. So first I want to start with a Kerberos golden ticket attack. So a Kerberos golden ticket attack, I won't go into the weeds on it, but I will point out that if we scroll down here in this detection, like all ExtraHop detections, there is an attack background section which does break down what takes place, as well as an illustration and references to MITRE attacks documentation on this attack technique. But I will give you the high level. So a Kerberos golden ticket attack is essentially where a attacker is able to leverage a KRB TGT to sign their own identity tickets and use those to assert themselves as an administrator and gain a valid Kerberos ticket that they can then use to access resources like SMB shares, etc., as an administrator, even though they are using a likely completely false and fully forged administrator account. This type of an attack is very challenging to detect because the Kerberos tickets are valid. They have been signed and they have been authenticated, and they are perfectly good for gaining access to those resources. These type of attacks are typically carried out using an offensive tool like Mimikatz, and they can be very challenging to detect in a number of ways. And a common type of security tool that struggles significantly with detecting these is an EDR. Many enterprises depend on their EDR agents as their primary line of defense for detecting malicious behavior in the enterprise, and it's not generally a very good solution for detecting a golden ticket attack. Now, a NDR solution or a network traffic analysis solution also is not a good solution for detecting golden ticket attacks because the traffic is encrypted. However, ExtraHop is able to integrate directly with the customer's Active Directory domain. This is a really powerful way to approach decryption because we integrate directly with the domain controller. The domain controller shares those session keys with us over an encrypted side channel, and we are then able to gain visibility into all of these Microsoft protocols and reveal information like this and detect these sensitive attacks. We do it out of band without the need to break and inspect, making it powerful both in terms of the fact that it is not interrupting the end-to-end encryption or breaking any of the inherent security of the approach that Microsoft has taken. It's not weakening the application in terms of introducing a point of weakness where something could break or lead to an outage. It's totally done out of band and it's done securely. And I think that's pretty powerful. So this Kerberos golden ticket attack, beyond just detecting the attack, because we can see into those flows, because we can see those tickets that are being used, we can see what resources are being touched, we are able to show you a lot of context around this, such as the events taking place before and after, whether they are being passed on encrypted protocols or not. And we actually can create records for all of the individual attacks that are taking place, where we can see these actual TGS recs going through leveraging these forged tickets and detect this for you and allow your analyst to dig into, collect records and packets associated with this. So very, very powerful. Let's look at a few other examples of where decryption, especially decryption of Microsoft protocols, can enable you to detect very challenging advanced persistent threat and lateral movement techniques that an attacker might use today. So looking here, I have a SQL injection attack, another one that requires decryption and another Microsoft protocol. Think about this. Without being able to decrypt those SQL statements, you're not able to see what methods are being used, statements are being passed, what parameters are involved. You're not able to see the data that's being pulled back. All you see is blobs and chunks of bytes going back and forth between clients and servers. And in many cases, that might be enough to detect that something is suspicious. An endpoint that's never made a connection to a database makes a first connection, pulls a lot of data that could be quite suspicious. But you don't know what's going on there, and it takes a lot of analyst time to then go find the right logs, pivot to other tools to collect the evidence necessary to determine if that potentially suspicious event was in fact a cyber attack. With ExtraHop leveraging decryption, you're able to do all that in one tool, save a lot of analyst time, and potentially save a lot of time for an ongoing breach. So you're either avoiding wasting time, or you're able to detect a real event faster. So it's a win-win either way, and a massively powerful force multiplier for your security analyst. Here we're able to not only detect that there appears to be a SQL injection attack, but we're able to dig in here and see any other detections that occurred before or after with these assets. We can see what devices are involved, but because of decryption, we can actually expose for you the records containing the actual SQL injection that's taking place so that the analyst can make an informed human decision. Let's look at one or two more examples today before we summarize. I want to talk about database data staging as well. So here's another example, once again, detected with decryption, another thing where we need to be able to see beyond the encryption layer in order to really understand what's going on. We can see where a device connects to a database server, but because we're decrypting either through the use of session key sharing, which we can then leverage to encrypt any number of protocols regardless of whether or not it's a Microsoft protocol, or the use of direct integration with Active Directory, we can expose details that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise, like the user accounts involved, the individual statements where we can see the copies and the selects, and all of the various filters and requests that are being applied as part of this database query to see exactly what this user is attempting to accomplish and make a good human decision after letting the machine learning deliver for us a curated and intelligent response, letting us know that there's something worth looking at. We're saving time, and then we're able to apply our expertise in a useful and efficient way. One other good example I might show for you would be an example of SMB CIFS data staging. So this is another one where maybe this is encrypted, maybe it's not. Maybe the file share is not leveraging SMB v3 and it's plain text, and then you can read it, no problem. But what if it is SMB v3? That's where you need that Microsoft protocol decryption that you get through our integration with Active Directory. From here, we can actually see inside of those connections, and we can see every single file that's being touched. And this is pretty powerful because here we can see that an endpoint that downloaded, what is it here, 1.2 gigabytes of data from this accounting file server, we can see what they downloaded. We can see that they're pulling back all of these account asset spreadsheets. And this is very, very suspicious and makes no sense for what this endpoint is. And from here, your human analyst can then pivot into and look at the records associated with this and understand all of the different methods and file shares being accessed and files and when this is happening. And then from there, if they determine this to be an attack, they're able to then go grab all the packets associated with it just a single click. This front to back workflow from a advanced machine learning driven detection, letting us know that something anomalous is occurring, to a expert analyst being able to apply their time efficiently and wisely, not being obstructed by things like encryption, to be able to gain access to the information they need to make an informed decision about how to handle this. Is this an incident, or is this just anomalous but acceptable behavior? And then being able to go collect evidence all in one tool with a streamlined workflow is really powerful. So I want to show you one more thing before we wrap here. So I'm going to pivot to assets. I'm going to show you something a little higher level, and we're going to zoom out a bit from the Microsoft protocol stuff and just talk about your enterprise applications in general. In my demonstration environment here, I have a lot of TLS connections represented as this SSL server activity. And in here, I can see all the information about the various versions being used, the devices involved in these negotiated sessions. But as you can see by this purple line here, we are decrypting a lot of the TLS connections in this environment. By being able to do that, we both expose our AI backend to be able to deliver detections around information being passed over protocols like HTTP, which would commonly be in those TLS connections if this is HTTPS, which in many of these cases it is, as well as allowing analysts to be able to freely explore that traffic and understand what's going on. So I can pivot from here to the HTTP server activity, and I'm able to then be able to see all the methods, and I'm able to see all the URIs and the refers and the hosts and all the information associated with the HTTP layer 7 aspects of these connections that are encrypted in HTTPS, passing my enterprise applications, but visible to me as a security analyst because we have access to that layer 7 data without breaking the end-to-end encryption, without disrupting the application, and without weakening our security posture. We can still maintain that visibility, which puts us way, way out in front of being able to allow attackers to live off the land within our environment by taking advantage of how well positioned we are from the standpoint of having deployed encryption in our networks. Here I can see all the methods, status codes, etc. So let's summarize. We want to prevent unauthorized access and privilege escalation attempts via Microsoft Active Directory infrastructure. To do this, we can integrate directly with the domain controller and expose all of those Kerberos ticket-related authenticated sessions that are being used across protocols like Kerberos, SMBv3, NTLM, MSRPC, WinRM, in addition to just TLS 1.3. We also want to be able to prevent living off the land tactics, east-west lateral movement across our enterprise applications that are using conventional protocols like HTTP, which we have properly secured as HTTPS. We can do this leveraging ExtraHop's ability to inspect TLS 1.3 and perfect forward secrecy connections without having to introduce a break and inspect architecture. Finally, we want to be able to defend against high-risk vulnerabilities like Print Nightmare, Microsoft Active Directory being exploited in advanced threat campaigns, or the carrying out of disruptive attack campaigns that take advantage of our growing implementation of encryption. And ExtraHop is a really powerful tool to enable you to do that, and hope you're able to take advantage of it. Thank you.